The reflection in my mirror showed dark circles under my eyes. But for once, I didn't care. Today wasn't about me. It was about Teresa's 7th birthday, and I'd be damned if I let anything ruin it. Even if that meant enduring 3 hours of Sophia's snide remarks about my quaint decorations and modest lifestyle. I'm Camila, and for the past 4 years, I've been raising my daughter alone, while my ex-husband Maximus plays occasional weekend dad between business trips and his new girlfriends. The birthday parties are always the worst. That's when his whole family descends like perfectly coiffed vultures, especially his sister Sophia. "Mommy, is Aunt Sophia really coming?" Teresa asked, peeking into my bedroom. Her princess dress sparkled in the morning light, and my heart melted at the sight of her gap-toothed smile. "Yes, baby, but don't worry about her. Today is your special day." I adjusted her tiara, pushing aside thoughts of last year's disaster, when Sophia had commented loudly about how second-hand party supplies show such admirable resourcefulness. The doorbell rang at exactly 2 p.m. Sophia always arrived first, probably to get in her initial round of jabs before the other guests arrived. "Camila, darling." She air-kissed both my cheeks, her designer perfume overwhelming my senses. "This is different." Her eyes swept across the living room I'd spent hours decorating with an enchanted forest theme. "Very DIY, though I suppose that's all the rage now among the budget-conscious." I forced a smile. "Teresa helped design everything herself." "Of course she did." Sophia's perfectly manicured hand waved dismissively. "Though if you'd accepted Mom's offer to host at the country club..." "Teresa wanted the party at home," I cut her off, my voice steady despite the familiar anger bubbling up. The next hour was a blur of arriving guests, excited children, and carefully orchestrated games. I caught Quinn's supportive glance from across the room as she helped serve cake. She knew how much I was holding back. "Oh my God, is that the same dress you wore to last year's Christmas dinner?" Sophia's voice carried across the room as I was setting up the pin-the-tail game. "I admire how you make things last." Several parents turned to look, and I felt my cheeks burn. But before I could respond, my phone buzzed with a text from Miles. "Meeting confirmed. Investors ready. This is it, Kay." I smiled, sliding the phone back into my pocket. Let Sophia have her moment. In 6 months, everything would be different. "Mommy, can we do presents now?" Teresa tugged at my sleeve, her eyes bright with excitement. "Of course, sweetheart." I gathered everyone around the gift table, deliberately ignoring Sophia's theatrical sigh when she saw the modest pile of presents. "Here's mine first," Sophia announced, producing an enormous box wrapped in designer paper. "Every little girl deserves something special." Teresa's eyes widened as she unwrapped the latest gaming console, the one I'd told her we couldn't afford right now. "I know your mom said no," Sophia stage whispered to Teresa, "but Aunt Sophia knows what little girls really want." The room went quiet. I could feel Quinn tensing beside me, ready to intervene, but I touched her arm gently. "Thank you, Sophia," I said calmly. "That's very generous." "Well, someone has to be," she replied with a saccharine smile. "We can't all be satisfied with mediocrity." Later, as the last guests were leaving, I overheard Sophia on her phone in the hallway. "Daddy, what do you mean the meeting was canceled? The Singapore deal has to go through." "Daddy? Daddy!" She caught me watching and quickly composed herself, but I'd seen the flash of panic in her eyes. Something was wrong in the perfect Whitfield world, and suddenly, the text from Miles felt even more significant. That night, after tucking Teresa into bed with her new console, which I'd decided to let her keep, I wouldn't use my daughter as a pawn. I sat in my kitchen with a glass of wine and my laptop. The business plan Miles and I had been working on for months glowed on the screen. Our investors were ready, the patents were nearly approved, and timing, as they say, is everything. "Just you wait, Sophia," I whispered to my empty kitchen. "Just you wait." My phone lit up with another text from Miles. "You won't believe what I just heard about Whitfield Industries." I smiled, took a sip of wine, and clicked reply. The game was about to change, and for once, I had all the right cards. The numbers look solid, Miles said, sliding the financial projections across his desk. But there's something you need to know about the Whitfield situation. I leaned forward in my chair, remembering Sophia's panicked phone call at Teresa's party. Tell me, their Singapore deal is falling apart. My contact in their legal department says Eugene's been making desperate moves, trying to cover massive losses. Miles lowered his voice. They're on the verge of collapse, Camila. The irony wasn't lost on me. 4 years ago, when Maximus left, his family had made sure I walked away with nothing but my daughter and my dignity. Now their empire was crumbling. What about our investment timeline? I asked, trying to keep my voice neutral. We could move forward now, but… Miles hesitated. If we wait 3 months, we might be able to acquire their distribution network for pennies on the dollar. My phone buzzed. A text from Teresa's school. Mommy, I forgot my lunch. Can you bring it? I need to run, I told Miles. Teresa forgot her lunch. He smiled knowingly. Go. We'll finish this later. Driving to Teresa's school, my mind wandered to the day Maximus left. I'd been making lunch then, too. Peanut butter and jelly sandwiches for Teresa's preschool. I can't do this anymore, he'd said, standing in our kitchen with a packed suitcase. The pressure from my family, this modest life, I need more. More than your daughter? I'd asked, but he was already walking out the door. The school secretary smiled as I walked in with Teresa's lunch bag. She's such a wonderful child, she said, always helping the other kids. I found Teresa in the cafeteria, sitting alone. My heart clenched. Baby, what's wrong? I sat beside her. Jenny said I can't sit with them because Aunt Sophia told her mom we're poor. Teresa's bottom lip trembled. Are we poor, Mommy? I pulled her close. No, sweetheart, we have everything we need, and soon we'll have even more. But why does Aunt Sophia say those mean things? Some people think money makes them better than others, I explained. But true wealth isn't in your wallet, it's in your heart. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Quinn. You won't believe what I just overheard at the country club, she said, when I called her back in the car. Sophia was arguing with her father about selling her house. Things must be worse than we thought. How bad? Bad enough that she was crying in the bathroom about having to cancel her trip to Paris. I pulled into my office parking lot, thoughts racing. The satisfaction I'd expected to feel wasn't there. Instead, I felt an uncomfortable mix of vindication and pity. Back at my desk, I found an email from our patent attorney. Final approval expected within 60 days. Proceed with investor meetings. My finger hovered over the reply button when Miles knocked on my door. Eugene Whitfield is asking about selling their warehouse space, he said without preamble. They're desperate for quick cash. The same warehouse space we were planning to lease? He nodded. At triple our budget, but if we wait, we could buy it outright when they crash, I finished his thought. Exactly. But Camila… Miles sat down. Are you sure you want to play this game? Revenge might feel good now, but… This isn't about revenge, I interrupted. This is business. My phone lit up with a text from an unknown number. We need to talk. Sophia. I showed Miles the message. He raised an eyebrow. What are you going to do? Before I could answer, another text came through. Please, it's about Teresa's trust fund. My hands clenched. The trust fund Maximus's family had promised Teresa, then conveniently lost in paperwork after the divorce. I should get back to work, Miles said, standing. Just remember who you are, Camila. Don't let them change that. After he left, I stared at Sophia's text. 4 years of snide comments, social humiliation, and watching my daughter cry because of their cruelty flashed through my mind. My phone buzzed one more time. A photo from Teresa. She'd drawn our family portrait in art class. Just the two of us, holding hands, with a rainbow above our heads. Love you, Mommy. I picked up my phone and typed a reply to Sophia. Tomorrow, 9 a.m., my office. The game was changing, but I needed to decide what winning really meant. As I looked at Teresa's drawing again, I realized this wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about rewriting our future. Sophia was 15 minutes late to our meeting, but her usual confidence was missing when she walked into my office. Her designer clothes looked immaculate as always, but her eyes were rimmed red. "Coffee?" I offered, more out of habit than hospitality. "No, She smoothed her skirt, sitting down. "Thank you for meeting me." I waited, letting the silence stretch uncomfortably. "It's about Teresa's trust fund," she finally said. "There's been a complication." "You mean the trust fund that mysteriously vanished after Maximus left?" I kept my voice neutral. "The one your mother said must have been lost in the market crash?" Sophia flinched. "We never meant to—" My phone rang. It was Teresa's school again. "Ms. Fletcher, Teresa's running a fever. Could you come get her?" "I'll be right there." I stood up. "We'll have to continue this another time." "Wait!" Sophia grabbed my arm. "Please, Daddy's business. We're in trouble. Real trouble. And I know you're working on something big with Miles." I carefully removed her hand. "I need to get my daughter." "Your daughter?" She laughed bitterly. "She's my niece, Camila. Family. Despite everything." "Family?" I turned back. "Where was family when Teresa needed her father? When your mother told everyone at church I was a gold digger? When you—" My phone buzzed with a text from Quinn. "Market rumors about Whitfield Industries getting worse. Stock down 30% today." Sophia's phone chimed at the same time. The color drained from her face as she read whatever message she'd received. "I have to go," I said, grabbing my purse. "Teresa needs me." "That's just it," Sophia called after me. "You always had what I never did. A child who actually needs you." I paused at the door. "What?" "Daddy never needed me. Max never listened to me. Even Mother just uses me for social appearances." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "But Teresa, she lights up when she sees you. Do you know what that's worth?" Before I could respond, Miles burst in. "Sorry to interrupt, but you both need to see this." He turned on the office TV. A business news anchor was mid-report. "Sources confirm Whitfield Industries CEO Eugene Whitfield has taken an emergency leave of absence amid allegations of financial impropriety." Sophia collapsed into the chair, her perfectly manicured hands shaking as she pulled out her phone. "Daddy's not answering." My phone buzzed again. Teresa's school wondering where I was. "I have to go," I said firmly. "Please," Sophia whispered. "Help me understand what's happening." For a moment, I saw past the designer clothes and practiced superiority to the scared little girl beneath. But Teresa needed me. "Miles will explain what he can. I have to get my daughter." In the car, Quinn called. "Did you see the news? Are you okay?" "I'm fine. Just getting Teresa from school." "And Sophia? Did she beg?" I thought about the tears in Sophia's eyes. "Something like that. Don't let her manipulate you," Quinn warned. "Remember what she did at Max's wedding?" I did remember. Sophia had made sure I wasn't invited, then sent me photos of Teresa dancing with her father and his new bride. At school, Teresa was curled up in the nurse's office, her cheeks flushed with fever. "Mommy," she mumbled as I gathered her in my arms. "Can we go home?" "Of course, baby." As I carried her to the car, my phone lit up with a message from Maximus, the first in months. "Is it true about Dad's company?" I ignored it. At home, after settling Teresa with medicine and her favorite cartoon, I checked my emails. The patent attorney had sent final approval documents. Our investors were ready to move, and Whitfield Industries stock had dropped another 15%. "Mommy?" Teresa called weakly from the couch. "Will you tell me a story?" I sat beside her, stroking her hair. "Once upon a time," I began, "there was a princess who thought she had everything." "Was she pretty like Aunt Sophia?" I paused. "She was beautiful on the outside, but she had to learn that true beauty comes from how you treat others." "Did she learn?" My phone buzzed with another text from Sophia. "I know I don't deserve your help, but I'm asking anyway." "I don't know yet, baby," I told Teresa. "The story isn't over." As Teresa drifted off to sleep, I thought about Sophia's tears, about revenge and karma, about the fine line between justice and cruelty. The power I'd dreamed of having was finally in my hands. The question was, what kind of ending did I want to write? The morning news was brutal. Eugene's face plastered across every business channel, the word fraud in bold letters beneath his photo. I turned off the TV when Teresa came down for breakfast. "Are you feeling better, sweetheart?" She nodded, climbing onto her chair. "Is Aunt Sophia okay? I saw her crying on TV." Before I could answer, my phone rang. It was Miles. "Turn on Channel 7, he said without greeting. "Eugene's wife is giving a statement." I waited until Teresa left for school before switching the TV back on. There stood Nora, Sophia's mother, her usual poise cracking as she faced the reporters. "My husband made some regrettable decisions," she said, her voice trembling. "But we're still a respectable family. These allegations are—" The feed cut to breaking news. Whitfield Industries announces mass layoffs. My office was chaos when I arrived. Miles was waiting by my door. 300 employees let go this morning," he said, following me inside. "Their warehouse is shutting down next week." "The same warehouse we were looking at?" He nodded. "It gets better. Guess who's been calling me all morning?" "Sophia?" "Their entire board of directors. They're practically begging for investors." He leaned forward. "We could buy the whole company for less than we were going to spend on that warehouse." My phone buzzed. A text from Quinn. "Have you seen this?" Attached was a social media post from Sophia's country club. "Due to unfortunate circumstances, the annual charity gala will no longer be hosted by the Whitfield family." Another text came through, this time from Maximus. "Tell Teresa I can't make it this weekend. Things are complicated right now." "Some things never change," I muttered. "What are you thinking?" Miles asked. Before I could answer, my assistant knocked. "Ms. Fletcher, Sophia's here. She doesn't have an appointment, but—" "Send her in." Sophia looked different. No designer bag, minimal makeup, hair pulled back simply. "Have you seen the news?" "Hard to miss," I replied. "Daddy's gone." Her voice cracked. "He left last night. No one knows where he is." Miles quietly excused himself, closing the door behind him. "Mother's a mess. Max won't answer my calls. Everything's falling apart." Sophia sank into a chair. "The press is camped outside my house. They're calling Daddy a thief." "Is he?" She looked up sharply. "Does it matter? We're still family. Are we?" I stood up. "When Maximus left, when I was struggling to keep a roof over Teresa's head, where was this family you're talking about?" "I know I was awful to you," she whispered. "I was jealous." "Jealous? Of what?" "You were free. Independent. I've never been either of those things." She wiped her eyes. "Even my trust fund was just another way for Daddy to control me." My phone buzzed again. An email from our investors. "Ready to move on Whitfield acquisition. Require immediate response." "I heard rumors about your business venture," Sophia said. "The patents, the investors. You've done amazing things, Camilla, without any help." "I had help, just not from your family." "I know." She stood up. "And I know I don't deserve anything from you. But I'm not asking for me. Mother, she's talking about selling the house Teresa visits Max in. When he bothers to show up." I couldn't help adding, "Please, just think about it. For Teresa's sake." After she left, Miles returned. "Well?" I showed him the investor email. "If we move now, we could take everything." But Teresa loves that house. Her few memories with her father are there." My phone lit up with a text from Teresa. "Mommy, Jenny invited me to sit with her at lunch today. She said she doesn't care what anyone says about us." Miles watched me reading the message. "You know, revenge might feel good for a moment. But what lesson does it teach Teresa?" I thought about Sophia's tears, about Teresa's innocent joy at making a friend, about the fine line between justice and becoming what we hate. "Call the investors," I said finally, "but not about the acquisition. I have a different proposal in mind. You're sure? I nodded, picking up my phone to text Sophia. Meet me tomorrow. Bring your mother and your lawyer. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about destroying your enemies. Sometimes it's about being strong enough to help them when they fall, and making sure they remember who lifted them up. My phone buzzed one last time. Teresa had sent a heart emoji. That was all the confirmation I needed. The boutique's sales assistant raised her eyebrows as I tried on the third designer dress. "This one's our most expensive piece," she said, probably expecting me to balk at the price. "I'll take it," I said, smoothing the silk against my hips. The black dress cost more than my first car, but today wasn't about money. It was about making a statement. My phone buzzed, Miles confirming the meeting arrangements. In 2 hours, I'd face Sophia, Nora, and their lawyers in my office. But first, I had another stop to make. The mall's luxury wing felt different now. The same stores where Sophia used to parade her wealth, making subtle digs about my budget-conscious choices, now seemed less intimidating. I walked into the designer shoe store with my head high. "Those are gorgeous," Quinn said, meeting me there. "But are you sure about this meeting? Nora can be manipulative." "So can I." I handed my credit card to the cashier. "When I need to be." Back at the office, I changed into my new outfit. The woman in the mirror looked powerful, confident. Everything Sophia had tried to make me feel I wasn't. Miles knocked on my door. "They're here. And Camila?" He paused. "Nice dress." They filed into the conference room like a funeral procession. Nora first, her face tight with forced dignity. Then Sophia, and finally their lawyer, clutching his briefcase like a shield. "Thank you for coming," I said, taking my seat at the head of the table. "Let's talk about the future of Whitfield Industries." "Our family business is not up for discussion," Nora snapped. "Mother," Sophia warned quietly. I opened my laptop. "Actually, it is. Your husband left the country with most of your liquid assets. The company's stock is worthless. You're facing multiple lawsuits, and your warehouse employees are about to lose their jobs. And I suppose you're here to gloat?" Nora's voice dripped with venom. "No." I turned my laptop around. "I'm here to offer a solution." Their lawyer leaned forward, adjusting his glasses. "This is a restructuring proposal," I finished. "My company will acquire 40% of Whitfield Industries. We'll inject enough capital to save the warehouse operations and settle the immediate lawsuits." 40%? Nora looked like she'd swallowed something sour. "You want us to give you nearly half our company?" "I want to save your company," I corrected. "And your house." Sophia's head snapped up. "What?" "The house stays in the family trust. For Teresa." I met Nora's eyes. "My daughter deserves to keep some connection to her father's family, don't you think?" The room fell silent. I could almost see the calculations running behind Nora's eyes. "Why would you help us?" she finally asked. "After everything." "Because Teresa taught me something you never could." I stood up, smoothing my new dress. "True power isn't in making others feel small. It's in choosing when to be big." My phone buzzed, Teresa's school appearing on the screen. I answered immediately, my heart jumping. "Mommy!" Teresa's excited voice came through. "I got an A on my math test." "That's wonderful, baby." I couldn't help smiling. "We'll celebrate tonight, okay?" When I looked up, Sophia was crying silently. Nora's facade had cracked, showing something that looked almost like shame. "The papers are ready," I said, sliding folders across the table. "You have until tomorrow to decide." "I don't need until tomorrow," Sophia said suddenly. "I'm in." "Sophia!" Nora protested. "No, Mother. Look at her." Sophia gestured at me. "Look at what she's built while we were busy tearing her down. I want to learn from that." My phone buzzed again. Quinn asking how it was going. I typed quickly. "Better than expected." "There are conditions," I said, turning back to them. "The warehouse workers keep their jobs. The charity gala continues, but under new management, and Teresa's college fund is reinstated. With interest." "You drive a hard bargain," their lawyer muttered, reviewing the papers. I learned from the best. I smiled at Nora. Didn't you always say business is business? As they left an hour later, papers signed, Sophia lingered behind. That dress, she said softly. It looks better on you than it ever did on me. I raised an eyebrow. I saw you buying it. It was mine, last season. She smiled sadly. But you wear it differently, like you don't need it to be strong. After they left, Miles brought in champagne. To the new partner of Whitfield Industries, he toasted. No, I corrected him, thinking of Teresa's excited voice, of Sophia's tears, of the long road ahead. To teaching our children better than we were taught. My phone lit up with a final text from Sophia. Thank you, for being the bigger person, for showing me what that looks like. I didn't reply. Some lessons are better taught in silence. The warehouse was eerily quiet as I walked through with Sophia, our heels echoing on the concrete floor. 300 employees would return tomorrow, their jobs secure under the new agreement. I never came here before, Sophia admitted, running her finger along a dusty shelf. Daddy said it wasn't a place for family. Everything is a place for family when you're fighting to save it. My phone buzzed, Maximus calling. I declined it. He's been trying to reach me too, Sophia said, noticing, now that the press has caught wind of the restructuring deal. Of course he has. I checked my watch. The workers arrive in an hour. Are you ready? She straightened her blazer. A simple one, not designer. Do you think they'll hate us? They'll hate your father. You have a chance to show them something different. The warehouse doors opened, and Miles walked in with the union representative, Jack. Ms. Fletcher, Jack nodded to me, then turned coldly to Sophia. Ms. Whitfield. Please, she stepped forward. Call me Sophia. I know you have every reason to distrust my family, but… Save it, he cut her off. 300 families almost lost everything because of your father's greed. And now 300 families get to keep their jobs, I interjected, because his daughter chose to do better. My phone buzzed again, this time with a text from Teresa. Mommy, when is Dad coming to get me this weekend? I showed the message to Sophia, whose face fell. He's in Dubai, she said quietly, trying to secure investors for his new venture. Of course he is, I typed back to Teresa. How about we have a girls' weekend instead? Jack cleared his throat. The workers will want guarantees, real ones, not just promises from another Whitfield. Show them, I told Sophia. She pulled out a folder. These are the new contracts, guaranteed employment for 2 years, with improved benefits and profit sharing. She handed them to Jack. And I'll be working here 3 days a week, learning the operation from the ground up. You? Jack couldn't hide his surprise. In the warehouse? I need to understand what my father never did. That a company is its people, not its profit margins. My phone lit up with a news alert. Whitfield Air Partners with ex-sister-in-law to save family business. They're here, Miles called from the door. A crowd of workers was gathering outside. Ready? I asked Sophia. She squared her shoulders. No, but I'm doing it anyway. The workers filed in, faces guarded, some angry, others afraid. Sophia stepped forward. 4 days ago, I had never set foot in this warehouse, she began. I was too busy buying designer clothes and planning charity galas to care about the people who made our family's wealth possible. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. My father betrayed your trust. He betrayed all of us. But today, thanks to Camila, we have a chance to rebuild. Not just the company, but our community. Why should we believe you? Someone called out. Because unlike my father, I'm not asking for your trust. Sophia's voice carried clearly. I'm asking for a chance to earn it. Starting today, I'll be working alongside you, learning from you. My phone buzzed with a text from Nora. The press is asking for a statement about Maximus abandoning his daughter again. I ignored it, watching Sophia connect with the workers, one conversation at a time. She was different now, humbled but determined. Jack approached me. This is real? She's really going to work here? Watch her, I replied. She's not her father. By afternoon, the warehouse was humming with activity. Sophia had ditched her blazer, helping to inventory stock with a team of workers who'd gradually warmed to her genuine interest in their work. "Why did you do it?" she asked during a quiet moment. "You could have taken everything, destroyed us completely." "Because Teresa's watching," I said simply, "and she needs to see that strength isn't about crushing others. It's about lifting them up when they fall." My phone chimed with another text from Teresa. "Jenny asked if I can sleep over tonight. Can I?" As I typed my reply, Sophia touched my arm. "Thank you, not just for saving the company, but for showing me what real power looks like. Just remember this feeling," I told her, "next time you're tempted to look down on someone." The warehouse doors opened again as another shift of workers arrived. Sophia straightened up, ready to introduce herself, to prove herself, to be better than the name she carried. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. Sometimes it's showing your enemies a better way to be. "Daddy's back," Teresa announced at breakfast, showing me her phone. "He wants to have dinner with us tonight." I nearly choked on my coffee. After 6 weeks of silence, now he appears? "Did Aunt Sophia tell him about the company?" Teresa asked innocently. "Probably, sweetheart." I stroked her hair. "Do you want to see him?" Before she could answer, my phone rang. Sophia. "He's trying to muscle his way back in," she said without preamble. "Max is at Mother's house right now, talking about his rightful place in the company." "Of course he is." I watched Teresa finish her cereal. "How's Nora taking it?" "She told him to leave." Sophia's voice held a hint of pride. "Said he abandoned his family when we needed him, and now he doesn't get to come back just because we're stable again." My phone beeped with another call. "Maximus." "He's calling me now," I told Sophia. "Don't answer. Come to the warehouse instead. There's something you need to see." An hour later, I walked into a transformed warehouse. Gone were the dusty shelves and dim lighting. The space was bright, organized, and humming with energy. Sophia stood with a group of workers, reviewing shipping schedules. She'd traded her designer wardrobe for practical work clothes, her perfectly manicured nails now short and practical. "Show her," she told the workers excitedly. They led me to a new section of the warehouse. "The Teresa Project," read a sign above rows of carefully packaged educational supplies. "We're partnering with local schools," Sophia explained, "providing supplies to underprivileged students." The workers came up with the idea. "And named it after Teresa?" I felt tears threatening. "She inspired it. After everything you've taught me about what really matters." My phone buzzed again. "Maximus." "Answer it," Sophia said. "It's time." I stepped outside and picked up. "Hello, Max." "Camila, baby, we need to talk." His voice oozed charm. "About the company, about us, about starting fresh." "There is no us, Max. There hasn't been since you walked out 4 years ago." "Don't be like that. I've changed. And with the company's new direction." "You mean the direction your sister and I created while you were hiding in Dubai?" He paused. "I have rights. I'm still a Whitfield." "No," I said firmly. "You're just a man who abandoned his daughter, and now that she's older, smarter, and surrounded by strong women who actually show up for her, you don't get to waltz back in. I want to see Teresa. That's her choice. But the company? That's mine and Sophia's." I hung up and went back inside. Sophia was watching me. "He'll try the lawyers next," she said. "Let him." I gestured at the warehouse. "We've built something real here, something honest." My phone lit up with a text from Teresa. "Can I have dinner with Dad and Aunt Sophia? I want him to see the warehouse." I showed Sophia the message. "Smart girl," she smiled. "Wants him to see what he missed out on." That evening, I watched from my office window as Teresa proudly showed Maximus around the warehouse. His expensive suit looked out of place among the workers and shipping crates. Sophia stood nearby, no longer the polished socialite, but a respected leader who knew every worker by name. My phone buzzed. Quinn calling. "How's it going?" she asked. "Teresa's showing Max the warehouse. He looks lost." "Good. Let him see what real strength looks like." Through the window, I saw Teresa pointing out her namesake project to Max. His face fell as she explained how it helped kids who couldn't afford school supplies. "Remember when you said we were too poor for new notebooks?" I heard her ask him as they passed below my window. "Now we help other kids get them instead." Sophia caught my eye through the window and nodded. We'd done this, transformed a family legacy of greed into something meaningful. My phone chimed with an email from our lawyers. "Mr. Whitfield's attorneys requesting board meeting." "Delete it," I told my assistant, "and send them our new company charter instead. The one that requires board members to work in the warehouse 1 day a month." Later, as Teresa and I drove home, she was quiet. "You okay, baby?" I asked. "Dad seemed different," she said thoughtfully. "Smaller somehow. Sometimes people who seem big only look that way because they stand on others. Real strength comes from lifting people up." "Like you and Aunt Sophia do?" I smiled. "Exactly like that." My phone lit up one last time. A message from Sophia. "Thank you for showing me how to be bigger than my name. Sometimes the biggest victories aren't won through force, but through grace. And sometimes the best revenge is simply living well, standing tall, and showing others how to rise." The autumn breeze carried the sound of laughter from the warehouse courtyard, where employees and their families gathered for the first annual company picnic. Teresa darted between tables, proudly showing off the new playground equipment her project had funded for the workers' children. "Who would have thought?" Sophia handed me a coffee, watching the scene. A Whitfield family gathering where no one's wearing designer labels or comparing stock portfolios. "Ah, Mother's still struggling with the concept," she added, nodding toward Nora, who sat somewhat stiffly at a table with warehouse workers' families, actually listening to their stories. My phone buzzed. Maximus again. I declined the call. "He's persistent," Sophia noted. "He's predictable," I corrected. "The company's stock tripled since the restructuring. Of course he wants back in." Teresa ran up, breathless with excitement. "Mom, come see what Jenny's dad made." She pulled me toward a display where Jack, our union representative, stood proudly beside rows of handcrafted wooden toys. "The workers started a side project," Sophia explained, following us. "They're making toys for children's hospitals, using their breaks and staying after shifts." "Their choice," Jack added quickly. "No overtime required." "But why?" I asked. "Because you and Sophia showed us what good leadership looks like," he said simply. "It's contagious." My phone lit up with a text from Quinn. "Have you seen the Business Journal article?" I pulled it up. "Whitfield Industries revolutionizes corporate culture, a story of redemption and female leadership." "They got it wrong," Sophia said, reading over my shoulder. "It's not about female leadership, it's about human leadership." Teresa tugged my sleeve. "Dad's here." Sure enough, Maximus stood at the entrance, looking uncomfortable in his casual attempt at casual clothes. Probably still designer, just less obvious. "I'll handle this," Sophia started forward, but I stopped her. "No, let Teresa handle it." We watched as Teresa walked to her father, head high, shoulders back, looking so much stronger than her 7 years. "You can join us," she told him, loud enough for nearby workers to hear. "But not in a suit, not as a boss, and not pretending you were here all along." Maximus glanced around, noticing the workers watching. "Sweetheart, I'm still your father. I have rights." "Rights?" Teresa's voice carried clearly. "Like the right to miss my birthdays, to cancel weekends, to make Mom cry?" I started forward, but Sophia held me back. "She needs this," she whispered. "You can stay," Teresa continued, "but only if you're ready to be different. Like Aunt Sophia learned to be different. Like Mom taught us to be." The courtyard had fallen silent. Even Nora was watching, something like respect flickering across her face. Maximus looked at me, then at Sophia, then back at his daughter. For once, his practiced charm failed him. I don't know how," he admitted. "Start by listening," Teresa said. "That's what Aunt Sophia did. Start by caring about people more than money. That's what Mom taught her." My phone buzzed with a message from Miles. "Board meeting in 20. bringing the new community initiative proposals. I need to go, I told Sophia. Board meeting. Take Teresa, she said. She should see this part too. What about? I nodded toward Maximus. I'll handle my brother, she smiled. I've learned from the best how to be firm with kindness. In the boardroom, Teresa sat beside me as we reviewed proposals for expanding the education initiative. Her input was surprisingly insightful. We should ask the kids what they need, she suggested, like you asked the workers what they needed. My phone lit up with a photo from Sophia. Maximus in the warehouse, tie removed, sleeves rolled up, actually listening to Jack explain the toy-making project. Think he'll change? I texted back. Doesn't matter, came her reply. We already did. After the meeting, Teresa and I walked back to the courtyard. The party was winding down, but the sense of community lingered. Workers' children played on the new equipment while their parents chatted with Sophia, Nora, and yes, even Maximus, who looked slightly less polished but somehow more real. Mom? Teresa squeezed my hand. Are we rich now? I looked around at the happy faces, the sense of purpose, the bridges built from the ashes of revenge. We're wealthy, I corrected, but not because of money. My phone chimed one last time, a message from an employee's child. Thank you for my new school books. Now I can be smart like Teresa. Sometimes the best endings aren't about winning or losing. They're about transforming the battlefield into common ground, where everyone has a chance to become better than they were. And sometimes the greatest victory is watching your child teach others the lessons you fought so hard to learn.
Hello, my name is Frank, and I was born into a family deeply entrenched in the mafia underworld. My father was the head of a notable crime family. Growing up in this environment meant that I was often met with disdain from others. My older brother, Liam, who was 12 years older than me, was groomed from a young age for a life in the mafia, receiving top-notch education and training for this exact purpose. Observing his life, I found myself yearning for something more ordinary. I shared my thoughts with Liam one day, expressing my desire to step into the regular world and work a normal job after graduating from college. Liam understood my feelings, as he always knew that the mafia life wasn't suited for me. When I discussed my plans with our parents, they were harsh, choosing to disown me rather than listen to my reasons. Undeterred, I left home after graduation and landed a job at a general construction company, eager to embrace life as a law-abiding citizen. I introduced myself to my new colleagues with a sense of immense relief and excitement, delighted to finally live the life I had always wanted. My personal life also began to flourish. I even started a relationship. At work, I was initially assigned basic tasks, but I was determined to prove my worth. My efforts paid off, and I was soon promoted to the sales team. The job was not without its challenges, especially with a difficult manager, Elizabeth, who had a reputation for being tough on her team. Many had faltered under her scrutiny, and some even faced termination. The whispers around the office suggested that Elizabeth had connections at the top, which made her nearly untouchable. Despite these obstacles, I worked tirelessly to win her respect, and eventually I succeeded. Elizabeth began to recognize my dedication and competence. "You're surprisingly good at your job," she remarked one day, a rare compliment that hinted I was finally making my mark. Thanks to my persistent efforts, Elizabeth warmed up to me, and it felt like a significant victory in my new life outside the mafia. However, the atmosphere started to shift in a concerning direction after that. "Hey, are you free after work today?" Elizabeth asked one evening. I had plans to run some errands and intended to head straight home. Then are you free next Friday?" she persisted. Considering my schedule was open, I agreed, albeit reluctantly. "Let's go out to dinner next Friday." With a girlfriend I was deeply committed to, the idea of dining alone with another woman was unappealing. But, convincing myself it was just a work commitment, I accepted. Elizabeth chose a rather posh restaurant, explaining, "You've been working hard lately. I thought I'd treat you." During the meal, she remarked, "It's a big deal to be liked by me, so you should feel confident." The dinner passed quickly. My mind was preoccupied with the desire to get home. As the evening wore on and the last train's departure neared, I prepared to leave. "Thanks for the meal," I said, standing up to go. Suddenly, Elizabeth's tone changed. "Hey, I'm kind of in the mood for that sort of thing today," she hinted, suggesting a more intimate continuation of the evening. Stunned, I responded, "I can't do that. I have a girlfriend whom I care about deeply." Her mood soured instantly. "Well, that killed the mood. I've lost my desire to treat you. Pay for your meal," she snapped before storming out. Left to settle the expensive bill myself, I caught the train home, pondering the awkward turn of events. The next day, Elizabeth's demeanor towards me was frosty and detached, as if she were an entirely different person. Moreover, rumors began circulating that I had tried to coerce her into going to a hotel, portraying me as the aggressor. Despite these challenges, I didn't let the rumors deter me. I remained focused on my work, even as I felt increasingly ostracized. Then, one day, Elizabeth approached me unexpectedly. "Hey, we're meeting a new client tomorrow. You should come with me," she instructed. Surprised, I mentioned, "But the company said we shouldn't take on new clients right now." Her reply was curt, signaling that this was not up for debate. As challenging as the situation had become, I knew I had to navigate these troubled waters carefully. Due to staffing shortages, Elizabeth had already cleared our client meeting with the higher-ups, ensuring there would be no objections. When I expressed concerns, she sharply retorted, "You think you're important enough to talk back to me?" It wasn't about talking back. I was simply voicing a legitimate concern. Regardless, I found myself being coerced into attending the meeting. Elizabeth was adamant. "Come on, I'm driving, get in." Normally she never drove, but today was different. We drove in silence until, unexpectedly, Elizabeth pulled into the parking lot of a motel. Confused, I asked, "What is the meaning of this? I thought I made it clear last time that I wasn't interested in this." "Just come inside and we'll talk," Elizabeth insisted, brushing off my protests as if they were nothing. Despite my reluctance, I followed her into the motel, promising myself that I would keep my wits about me. Inside the room, the situation took a dark turn. As soon as I entered, I was shoved from behind, crashing to the floor in pain. Dazed, I looked up to find not just Elizabeth, but 4 menacing-looking men armed with bats and golf clubs. "What is this all of a sudden?" I demanded, trying to make sense of the ambush. "Just shut up and be quiet," one of the men growled as he swung a bat at my leg. A sharp pain surged through me, rendering me unable to stand properly. Elizabeth, with a twisted sense of satisfaction, revealed, "I'm the mistress of a mafia underboss. These are his men. In other words, they work for me too," she added, her voice cold and detached. The reality of my predicament sank in as the men prepared to continue their assault. "Take this guy to the limit," Elizabeth ordered them. The beating was brutal and relentless. Every time I neared the edge of consciousness from the pain, a harsh jolt would pull me back to the harsh reality. "Don't kill him yet. We've got to take him to the very limit," Elizabeth instructed her henchmen as they continued their vicious attack. Initially, I was subjected to a brutal beating, leaving me severely injured but still alive. One of the men hesitated. "Are you sure about this? He's messed up and he works with us at the company." "It's fine," another responded dismissively. "He's just a regular employee, doesn't have any pull like I do. Let's think up some more fun stuff to do with him next." As they inflicted pain and discussed their next moves with disturbing enthusiasm, I watched them closely, searching for any opportunity to escape. Doubt surfaced among them. "Is this really under the underboss's orders? This guy doesn't seem that important." "Are you questioning me?" Elizabeth snapped back. "The underboss said to use you guys as needed." As they momentarily turned away to argue, I mustered all my strength, pushed myself up, and stumbled toward the door. "Hey, wait! Don't let him get away!" I heard Elizabeth shout as I forced the door open and limped away as fast as I could. As I ran, I noticed something odd. All the doors to the other rooms were wide open. I darted into one of them, slamming and locking the door behind me. Initially, they banged on the door, causing a commotion, but then resorted to shouting in the hallway, trying to intimidate me further. "You can shout all you want," one yelled. "This motel is under our control. There are no other guests, and no one's coming to help you anytime soon." Desperate, I realized I had my phone with me. But without knowing the motel's exact location, it would be difficult to direct anyone to help. They taunted from outside. "We've got orders to kill you today. No one's coming for you." "Don't underestimate Connie's family," another voice jeered, revealing their affiliation to one of the largest organized crime groups on the West Coast, a group that my brother Liam was a part of. Seizing the moment, I decided to call Liam, hoping he could pull some strings quickly. "Please pick up," I murmured, clutching my phone tightly, trying to keep my voice low enough not to be heard outside. "Hello? Frank? What's up?" Liam answered. In a hushed tone, I explained, "I'm locked in a motel room right now, managed by Connie's family. They forced me here and beat me with bats and golf clubs." "Do you know which motel?" he asked urgently. "That's the problem," I admitted, the gravity of my situation sinking in deeper. I didn't know where I was. "Got it. Don't panic," Liam said calmly over the phone. "If it's a motel, is there anything in the room that could help identify it?" Frantically searching, I spotted a flyer with a hotel name. "It looks like it's called Vista Sol Hotel. Do you know it?" "Yeah, that's close to here. I'll head over right away." "Sit tight," Liam replied, and then the call ended. Just as I hung up, Elizabeth and the men burst into the room. "There's nowhere to run now. Let's have some fun, shall we?" their leader sneered. Until that moment, I had been paralyzed by shock and confusion. However, knowing that Liam was on his way sparked a new energy in me. "Shut up. I'm not just going to lie down and take this," I snapped back defiantly. "Are you seeing how many of us there are and still talking tough? I can take you punks on my own," I challenged, my voice brimming with a mix of fear and adrenaline. One of them swung a bat towards my head, but I dodged just in time and retaliated with a fierce kick. "Come at me then, you little punk," I taunted, trying to fend them off. As I squared up to continue my defense, another blow came from my blind spot. I staggered, dazed by the hit. The group laughed menacingly, closing in. "Giving us trouble, kicking like that? We'll end you. Time to meet your maker," one of them threatened, lifting the bat for another strike. I braced myself, expecting the worst, but suddenly one of them intervened. "Wait, he's made fools of us this much. Let's torture him a bit more," he proposed. Another chimed in with a cruel idea. "First, let's strip his clothes and take an embarrassing video of him. Post that online and he might just want to die himself." "Oh, that sounds super fun. Do it, do it," they jeered as they lifted me and threw me onto the bed. "We'll undress you gently then, okay? This is going to be fun," they mocked. "Stop! Don't touch me!" I yelled, filled with despair and unable to resist their overpowering strength. But then, the sound of the motel's front door being forcefully broken down echoed through the room. What was that sound? I wondered aloud, hoping against hope that it was Liam. "Why the hell are you laughing?" one of them growled, puzzled and angry at my sudden change in demeanor. "You're in for it now," he threatened. But I knew. "What you guys are finished," I said through gritted teeth, smiling defiantly at them. Then, from the hallway, the sound of the elevator arriving could be heard. "Hey, Jacob, go check it out," the leader ordered nervously. One man, bat in hand, cautiously stepped into the hallway. A tense few minutes passed, then a scream shattered the ominous silence. Then, the voice outside was abruptly cut off and the hallway fell silent. "What happened? Hey, go check it out," one of the men urged his companion. "Don't order me around," the other snapped back. "You guys call yourselves men but have no guts. Just go." "Shut up! Who do you think you're talking to?" The argument escalated as tensions rose. They paused when they heard footsteps approaching the door. Quickly, they whispered among themselves, "Right, as soon as they come in, we'll attack all at once. Got it?" They all nodded and positioned themselves behind the door, listening as the footsteps neared. Suddenly, with a loud shout, one of the men lunged at the door, swinging his bat. "Oh yeah, clean hit," he exclaimed as he grabbed the hair of the person he had struck and dragged him into the room. "Take that! Don't get cocky! Come on, show us your face!" Still gripping his hair, the men forced his head up, only to freeze in shock the moment they saw his face. "No way! It can't be, ow, damn, that hurt. Why are you here? Do I need to check in with you every time about where I am and what I'm doing?" The newcomer snapped, his authority unmistakable. "No, of course not," they stammered, recognizing their mistake. "We thought Jacob got taken out." "Shut up, no excuses," the figure, clearly Liam, retorted as he dealt a punishing blow to one of the men, then turned to the other. "You're next, huh? I was just following orders, but you still hit me good, didn't you?" "I'm sorry," the man pleaded, but Liam was relentless, beating him until he was almost unconscious. After ensuring they were no longer a threat, Liam hurried over to me. "Looks like they did a number on you. You tried to fight back but couldn't win. You're not used to fighting after all," he observed, helping me up and sitting me on the bed. "What happened? These guys are from our family, aren't they?" I managed to say, still reeling from the ordeal. "Yeah, but it seems like they were told to kill you and jump you all of a sudden. Who beat you up?" Liam asked.
"All three of them did whatever they wanted, including the guy you dragged in," I said, pointing at each of them and making eye contact. Liam stood calmly, then turned to address Elizabeth, who had remained silent until now. "So who the hell are you? You've got quite the attitude." "What's it to you if you're here? That means you laid hands on them and Frank, right?" Elizabeth retorted, trying to deflect. "I was just watching. I didn't do anything directly," she claimed, but it was clear she was the instigator. "So, who are you?" Liam pressed, demanding an answer. Laughing, Elizabeth finally spoke. "I'm Frank's superior. Oh, this guy doesn't do things properly at all. So I figured I'd teach him a lesson," Elizabeth declared, suggesting that bringing mafia influence into workplace disputes was somehow a teaching tool. Liam couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity of it all. "So, can I go home now?" I asked, half in jest. "You think I'm going to say that's fine?" "I didn't lay a hand on him," Elizabeth retorted, her tone defensive yet aggressive. "That attitude of yours irked me. You couldn't handle your business on your own, so you dragged the mafia into this? Is it my fault for not obeying my boss just because she's a woman?" "Don't play that card. Do you mean about not going to the hotel? Since when are a boss's orders absolute, especially under these circumstances?" "You're messed up in the head," I countered. Elizabeth shrugged, unabashed. "I can say that I'm a boss, and no one at the company goes against what I say. How does someone just from the sales team wield that much power?" "Well, since you've seen all this, I'll tell you." "What is it then?" I demanded. "Those guys only ever wanted one thing from me, so I used the mafia to threaten them. In other words, I gained leverage over them. That's why no one can defy me." "So, you've been firing people you don't like just like that?" I clarified, shocked by her candidness. "That's right. What's wrong with that? I'm practically carrying the company, so it's fine," Elizabeth claimed, her justification as flimsy as it was audacious. Liam, however, was visibly unsettled by this revelation. "That means you've been freely using our guys regularly, huh?" "That's right," Elizabeth admitted, then paused, looking around. "And you're not going to do anything about it, are you? After all, I'm the woman of your underboss. You wouldn't dare lay a hand on the underboss's woman, would you?" Her arrogance was palpable, but Liam called out to a nearby underling, "Hey, Eric's downstairs, right? Go get him." As the underling hurried out, Elizabeth's bravado waned slightly. After a tense wait, the underling returned with a stern-faced man named Thomas. "What can I do for you?" he inquired. "I want to ask you something.
Are you keeping some woman with questionable taste around? Liam asked directly. Thomas, looking genuinely puzzled, responded, I don't know any woman like that. What do you mean? Liam glared at Elizabeth, then back at Thomas. No, I mean exactly what I said. Elizabeth, now nervous, tried to salvage her position. I've drunk with Eric and had meals with him. I've even been close to him during those times. After a moment of contemplation, Thomas finally spoke up. Oh, I remember now. Remember what? Liam pressed. This chick was at a pub near the office, Thomas recalled, shedding light on the lesser significance Elizabeth held, contrary to her grand claims. It seems she heard I was an underboss in the mafia, and she came on strong, Thomas recounted with a touch of sarcasm. So you made her your woman? Someone asked incredulously. No way, Thomas scoffed. A woman with such mediocre looks and a nasty personality? That's a hard pass for me, but she's been going around claiming she's my woman. Seriously? When I first met her, she was so irritating that I had to put her in her place, Thomas continued mockingly. Meanwhile, Elizabeth, who had been parading around as Eric's woman, was called out. You're messed up in the head to think you could pull this off. What do you mean messed up? Elizabeth retorted defiantly. It's not messed up. Are all the employees at Frank's company like this? Someone in the crowd asked, half joking. She's particularly delusional. I only realized how crazy recently, Thomas answered. The room erupted in laughter, contrasting sharply with Elizabeth's growing anger. Her face turned bright red as the reality of her deception became apparent. So she was using my men without my knowledge, tricking them, Thomas realized aloud. These idiots fell for it. The surrounding mafia members, who had been quietly observing, now spoke up. This woman isn't the underboss's lady after all. Guess not. You dummies got fooled by someone like her, another chimed in. She even used the underboss's name and dirtied our gang's reputation. You had plenty of opportunities to verify her claims. Didn't you think to check with him directly? Thomas criticized. This woman told us to keep it a secret from the underboss because she wanted to surprise him later with her cooperation. Good thing you punks have learned your lesson to verify facts from now on, one of the men added, mocking the gullibility of his peers. Then, one of the men who had been deceived by Elizabeth grabbed a bat and turned toward her angrily. Hey, you tricked us good. What? You guys were totally into it too? I was doing it for the bosses. If you ain't special, I ain't holding back, he said before swinging the bat and hitting Elizabeth in the stomach as hard as he could. Seeing this, Eric called out to Liam and Thomas. I got one request. What is it? Thomas asked. Mind if I get a hit in too? Go for it, Thomas replied. Eric approached Elizabeth slowly. You're gonna hit me too, even though you're a man? What the hell are you saying now? If you lay hands on me again, you're not gonna get off easy, Elizabeth threatened, tears mixing with the blood from her nose. We are the mafia, you know. Who do you think you're threatening? Eric said before punching Elizabeth in the face with all his might. Elizabeth's response was furious and tearful. I'll never forgive you. Don't mess with me. I know people in the police too. I'll crush you even if I have to use the whole company. You think you can crush us with one measly company? All the employees at my company do whatever I say, so I can make them do anything, Elizabeth spat back defiantly. That going to happen? None of our guys are going to have anything to do with you anymore, Thomas retorted. Shut up! I can trick any number of those good-for-nothing thugs, Elizabeth declared. As she ranted, Liam took something out of his pocket, grinning. What's that? Someone asked curiously. This? Liam held up the object. It's a voice recorder. I have recorded everything up to now. What if I send this to your company? You're totally screwed, I told Elizabeth, watching her face drain of color. Adding to her dismay, I revealed, by the way, I had them film everything since these guys walked in. Just audio wouldn't be enough evidence. With video, it's undeniable. Elizabeth's desperation grew palpable. She approached Liam, clinging to him. Please, anything but that. I'll do anything. The hell are you saying? Liam scoffed. You provoked me like crazy and even lied. But frankly, I don't give a damn. It's your damn fault. Rejected by Liam, Elizabeth slumped to the floor, defeated. Frank, mind if I deal with these guys? Liam asked, pointing to the gang members who looked ashamed. It's got nothing to do with me anymore, so do what you want, I responded. My bad, I let you get hurt too. Nah, I'm grateful. This will probably make work more comfortable, I mused. Oh, about this audio and video data. Mind if I keep it for a bit? She might have done the same thing to others, so I want to look into it. Sure, I get it. I'll send the data to your company later. Do whatever makes you happy, bro, Liam agreed. Then the gang members took Elizabeth and the guys who had used violence and left. I wanted to talk with you a bit too, but go home for today. I'm okay, it's just this much, I reassured Liam. No way, go to the hospital and get checked out properly, he insisted as he left the room. Eric then stood in front of me, nodded, and started speaking. Thomas is worried about you, Frank, but that's an overreaction, right? After he got the call from you, he was more flustered than I've ever seen him. He always acts tough, but deep down, he cares about family, Eric explained. I see. So please go to the hospital for him. But he won't know if I went to the hospital or not, right? In that case, send us the medical bill from the hospital. I see. If you could consider Dawn's feelings, I'd appreciate it. That day, I told them I was going straight home instead of to the office and headed to the hospital. Fortunately, there were no abnormalities with my bones, but since I had bruises, the hospital asked about the circumstances. However, I couldn't exactly say I got beat up by the mafia, so I insisted I fell and went home. Good morning, I greeted the next day at the office as if nothing had happened. Then, my coworkers and seniors crowded around me, curious. What's going on? I asked. One of my coworkers showed me an email on the company computer. It had audio and video of the incident attached, and the content was clear and presented in an easy-to-understand way.
Although my name wasn't mentioned anywhere in the video and the audio was conveniently muted, the content sparked curiosity. What in the world is this about? People at the company wondered. Additionally, the email clarified that I had exposed Elizabeth's true nature, which made many at the company grateful to me. Given that the scandal involving Elizabeth had blown up, the higher-ups involved were facing ostracism, and Elizabeth herself was on the verge of being sued for causing significant damage to the company. Feeling a deep sense of gratitude towards Liam for his help, I called him after work. Hello, Liam. Did you see the email? And did you go to the hospital? I went to the hospital, so I'll send a bill your way. The email was amazing, right? I edited it so people wouldn't find out you're my little brother, Liam revealed. So that's what it was. Well, thanks. You helped me out. I don't want to cause you any trouble either. Come on, trouble is a feeling I get now that being a white-collar worker is tougher than being in the mafia, depending on the time and place, Liam said, somewhat humorously. Somehow it felt like I was talking to my brother for the first time in a long while. But I respect you, you know. There was a time when I didn't want to become involved in mafia life. Is that so? Liam seemed surprised. Yeah, but I couldn't say that. I just silently listened to what Dad said. Yeah, but you properly stated your opinion and stuck with it, even if it meant getting disowned. That's true. I always thought that was so cool of you. I'm glad you thought of me that way, I responded, feeling a warm sense of pride. Yeah, I'm genuinely proud to have you as my little brother. Thank you. This must be some kind of fate. Let's go out for a meal sometime, Liam suggested. That's going to be your treat then, right? I teased. Well, I'm the older one, so I'll pay for that. I ended the conversation feeling a mix of frustration and gratitude about the entire incident, but also a renewed connection with my brother, something that had been missing for a while.
From this point on, my brother and his wife have decided that they'll run the household by themselves, asking me to find a different place to live. My mother, siding with them, treated my presence as a nuisance. Do they even realize who's been paying for most of our home expenses? Such disregard was something I never saw coming. My name is Melissa, and I'm a 31-year-old woman who has lived at my parents' place since returning from college. Initially, I dove into the corporate world, aiming to carve out my career path. However, the hurdles proved too daunting, and I returned home, facing a period of joblessness. During this time, I explored remote work opportunities, leveraging my background in science. I started a freelance engineering career, taking on small projects at first. The pay was modest, but the freedom to work independently held profound significance for me, offering a stark contrast to the structured environment of traditional jobs. This setup allowed me to earn a substantial income with minimal social interaction. As my confidence and client base grew, so did my income, eventually matching what I would make in a typical corporate job. Nevertheless, the main challenge was my parents' understanding of my work setup, particularly my mother's hesitance. My father seemed to get it after I explained, but my mother, who clings to traditional views, couldn't grasp the concept of working from home. Despite my efforts to clarify, showing her client emails and pay statements as proof of my legitimate work, she remained dubious. She would often question the sustainability of my career and hint at its possible illegitimacy, suspecting it might be some underhanded business or even connected to some questionable group, despite the regular payments proving otherwise. Despite my detailed explanations, my mother's doubts persisted. She frequently voiced concerns over my dependency on what she saw as unstable unemployment benefits. While I had thought about moving out and living independently, my savings weren't quite ready to handle such a transition. During this period, my father's health began to decline, with worsening conditions in his legs and back requiring nursing care and leading to his early retirement. He assured me his pension would be enough, but knowing my mother's spending habits, I knew challenges lay ahead. As I watched my father's face, the lines of worry and fatigue were evident, mirroring his anxiety about our uncertain future. Throughout my college years and my subsequent return home due to mental health challenges, he had been my unwavering support. The thought of leaving him to fend for himself while I pursued an independent life weighed heavily on my heart. My mother, too, was visibly shaken by the abrupt decline in his health, struggling to grasp the sudden change. In light of these circumstances, I felt a profound sense of duty to give back to the family that had supported me through thick and thin. I reassured my father of my commitment to support the family financially from then on. He was initially surprised, questioning the sufficiency of my income. However, I confidently demonstrated the stability of my financial situation, which seemed to alleviate his concerns. My father, who had always tried to understand my unique work situation, was pleasantly surprised by my newfound financial stability. Encouraged by his acceptance, I took on the responsibility of contributing to household expenses, medical bills, and other financial obligations. Each month, I began transferring a significant portion of my income into my father's bank account. Aware of my mother's frequent use of my father's credit card, I took proactive steps by creating a new main card for myself and providing her with a supplementary card to help manage spending more efficiently. My father, always cautious about finances, urged my mother to adopt a more frugal approach. Despite my contributions, my mother remained skeptical and even questioned whether it was still appropriate for me to live at home. I defended my position by highlighting the financial support I was providing, arguing that my absence would make things more challenging for everyone. Although she was initially unconvinced and suspicious of my motives, my father's steady persuasion eventually swayed her to allow me to stay.
As I continued balancing my work and household responsibilities, I noticed my mother increasingly taking my efforts for granted. Her expectations for the household chores grew stricter, often chiding me to complete tasks faster. "Can't you finish your chores quicker?" she would complain. I tried to explain the challenges of multitasking while maintaining a full workload, but she dismissed my concerns. The strain in our relationship grew, becoming seemingly irreparable, in stark contrast to my father's understanding and appreciation of my efforts. Despite this strained dynamic, we persevered in this manner for a year. However, after that year, my father's health deteriorated further, necessitating his hospitalization. I visited him daily, maintaining our bond and support through this tough time. In those moments of shared concern and reassurance, my father expressed his gratitude, fully recognizing the tension between my mother and me as he faced his health challenges. Despite the emotional toll it sometimes took on me, I stayed committed to supporting my family, drawing strength from memories of my mother's dedication during my student years. However, the dynamic within our household took a sharp turn with the unexpected arrival of my brother Matthew and his wife Catherine. They announced they would be living with us to supposedly lighten my load. This news caught me off guard, and I noticed my mother avoiding my gaze during the discussion. Although Matthew and Catherine claimed they were here to help, their words seemed to carry an unspoken implication that I wasn't doing enough. My mother, subtly hinting at my need to contribute more, thanked them. Despite my surprise, I learned that Matthew, a graduate of a prestigious college, had secured a position at a well-respected company. This revelation made me question the real reasons behind their sudden move into our home. Surely, with Matthew's substantial salary, they could manage without relying on my financial support, especially since I was already fully engaged in my career pursuits. Adapting to life with Matthew and Catherine at home proved more challenging than expected. One morning, as I was deep in my work, Catherine's voice pierced through. "Wake up, Melissa, make breakfast." She banged on my door, demanding attention. As a morning person already up and focused on my tasks, I explained that I was already working. Despite this, they insisted I prepare breakfast, pressing me to hurry along with it. The added demands of accommodating my brother and his wife added another layer of complexity to our already tense household dynamics. Catherine demanded I get breakfast ready, her tone leaving little room for protest. Reluctantly, I dragged myself to the kitchen. Our family usually enjoyed a leisurely pace in the mornings, savoring meals when everyone, including my mother and Catherine, was around. I had always thought it was common for a wife to prepare breakfast for her husband, but Catherine insisted on a collaborative effort, and so I joined them. Despite my best efforts, their dissatisfaction was immediately apparent. "Is this what you prepared for breakfast? This isn't enough," they critiqued. I had meticulously arranged a breakfast plate with soft scrambled eggs, a crisp lettuce salad, freshly buttered toast, and a succulent sausage, thinking it would be appreciated. Yet it seemed I had somehow missed the mark. "You don't have to eat it," I retorted, surprised by their blunt criticism. Their shock was palpable, and quickly their surprise turned to confrontation. They questioned my attitude and demanded to know who I thought I was. My brother, often condescending and perhaps influenced by our mother, mocked me. Despite my attempts to explain my work commitments, they dismissed them outright. "What kind of work is that? Are you crazy?" they exclaimed. Frustrated by their lack of understanding and the disruption to my work, I grabbed my laptop, ignored their further protests, and left the house. As I walked away, my brother's voice followed me, demanding to know where I was going. I ignored his question and made my way to the hospital where my father was staying. Rushing into my father's hospital room, I found him looking up with a surprised expression. "Melissa, what's wrong? You seem flustered," he observed. I recounted the morning's events, and my father, wearing a look of concern, responded, "I didn't know they were acting like that. I'm sorry, Melissa, don't worry about it. You can choose your way of life."
Feeling somewhat lost and worried about my mother's comfort with Matthew at home, I shared my concerns. The conversation with my father provided a much-needed perspective, reminding me of the importance of standing up for my own choices in life. My father offered me comforting reassurance, saying, "You don't need to be in a place where you don't feel comfortable. All I want is for you to live happily in the way you choose." Bolstered by his supportive words, I decided to leave home. That evening, as I returned, I walked into a scene that felt straight out of a tense movie. The serious expressions on the faces of my mother, brother, and sister-in-law were unmistakable. My brother immediately accused me of shirking work responsibilities, claiming he had to take the day off because of my absence, a decision I internally questioned for its ease. Their voices grew louder, culminating in my brother's stern command, "Get out of here. From now on, the three of us will live together. If you don't want to stay, please leave. We don't need an overbearing presence like you to support us." His words were a blow, and to my surprise, I could only muster a confused, "Why?" Ignoring my protests, my brother and his wife were adamant about my departure, declaring that I was no longer needed. With our father absent, my mother aligned with their sentiments and saw me as an obstruction. My frustration mounted as they downplayed my role in managing the family's finances, focusing solely on their concerns. Enraged by their insensitivity and unwillingness to let the situation deteriorate further under their control, I devised a plan. I discreetly transferred the funds from the credit card my mother used daily to another account I managed. This move was designed to catch her off guard when she found she could no longer use her card. I also initiated a transfer of money from my father's account, a critical support for the family's financial stability, to reinforce my position and ensure they understood the impact of my contributions. I made sure that only my father's medical expenses could be withdrawn from the separate account I had set up, a detail that my mother was not aware of. This meant a significant financial burden would now shift to my brother and his wife. While I wasn't fully aware of the specifics of my brother's income, I was confident that he would now truly feel the financial strain. After completing all the necessary arrangements, I packed my belongings and announced my intention to leave, saying, "I'm leaving this place." To my surprise, my mother, brother, and sister-in-law, who had previously been relentless in their harassment, were visibly shocked by my decision. Their expressions of astonishment showed they hadn't anticipated such a decisive move from me. Yet, despite their shock, there was a subtle hint of enjoyment in their reactions. As I declared my departure, they made belittling remarks and expressed their relief with biting comments like, "You're finally leaving. We've never dealt with such a troublesome person. You're not coming back, are you?" In response, I firmly stated, "Of course not. Don't contact me." They smiled as I walked out, but I couldn't help wondering how they would cope once the reality of my absence and the financial implications settled in. Embarking on a new life in a tranquil environment, I found solace and the freedom to enjoy my own space. Refreshed and focused, I immersed myself in my work. However, as I had anticipated, the peace was soon disrupted by an unexpected call from my brother. "I told you not to contact me. What's wrong?" I asked, my tone reflecting my annoyance. His voice carried a mix of surprise and urgency as he inquired about my involvement in the family's financial transactions. Confirming my role, I reminded him that I had explained my work responsibilities multiple times, but neither he nor our mother had taken them seriously. Expressing his confusion, he admitted, "Well, Mom said a lot of things and I was a little confused." It was an acknowledgement that perhaps they had misjudged the situation and the fault wasn't mine after all. He explained that they were in a financial bind. With my absence, they found it challenging to manage expenses, and my mother's unchecked spending had only made things worse. Although I felt a twinge of sympathy, I firmly stated, "I was able to support you in many ways because I was living there. Now that I'm not, you'll have to manage on your own."
The situation took an unexpected turn when my brother urgently contacted me, asking for help to transfer money into his bank account. Baffled, I half-jokingly asked if he was serious, especially since he had been working at a sizable company. To my surprise, he admitted he had been fired due to a significant error at work. This revelation left me momentarily speechless. It seemed he might have moved back to our parents' home under the assumption that there was plenty of money to go around, possibly relying on the idea of a stable pension after our father's retirement. Wanting to clarify the extent of my financial contributions to the household, I found a certain irony in imagining his shock upon discovering the reality. His wife and my mother also joined in pleading for financial help, claiming that they were nearly out of savings. My mother even disclosed that my father had decided to stop contributing to the household finances. In response, I declared that I had supported them sufficiently and urged them to work hard and support themselves. I chose to cut off communication, emphasizing my decision to distance myself from their financial difficulties. Meanwhile, my father, aware of the tension in his relationship with my mother, consulted a lawyer and decided to pursue a quieter life elsewhere. I continued to visit my father daily, maintaining our close relationship. During one of these visits, a friend informed me about my brother's ongoing struggles, further highlighting the consequences of their lack of financial prudence. He had settled into a modest apartment, adopting a frugal lifestyle. Meanwhile, my mother, who had always been a homemaker, struggled to adapt to her new job, and my brother found it challenging to mesh with the opinions of his younger colleagues. Despite his wife's efforts to support him, she eventually found the pressure overwhelming and chose to leave, forcing my brother and mother to face their challenges on their own. Concerns lingered about my mother, who continued her old habits of overspending, leading to mounting debts. However, I recognized that there were limits to the assistance I could provide without compromising my stability. Focused on my endeavors, I worked diligently from my comfortable living space, gradually accumulating more resources and contemplating new ventures. I aimed to spend quality time with my father, who remained a source of cheer in my life. Each moment spent with him was cherished, appreciating the peace and happiness he now found away from the familial tensions. Back when I was in high school, I wasn't considered one of the privileged ones. My journey through life started in a modest home with a father who ran his own small business and a devoted mother who looked after our home. My early years were carefree. After school, I'd fling my backpack in a corner and spend the rest of the day playing with friends in the neighborhood park. However, things took a different turn during my middle school years when my father's work demanded more of his time, often keeping him away from home for long stretches. Despite his absence, he made an effort on his days off to spend quality time with us, perhaps on a scenic drive or a day at an amusement park. But mostly, it was just my mom and me at home. I remember one night, unable to sleep, I stumbled upon my mom poring over our household budget, her expression weary yet forced into a smile for my sake. She reassured me everything was fine, but the signs of strain were evident. Our meals became simpler, the variety on our dinner table lessened, and the once commonplace fruits disappeared. This change in our lifestyle didn't go unnoticed at school. One day, a classmate named Roy, who enjoyed making fun of others, noticed my plain lunch, a simple serving of rice with a few pickles. He cruelly taunted me, suggesting my dad had abandoned us, which was why our meals had become so basic. His words, filled with mockery, hurt deeply, but the image of my mother's resilient smile held me back from reacting angrily. Fast forward to a recent high school reunion, I encountered the same classmate. Despite us both being adults now, he shockingly drenched me with wine, letting it pour over my head as a twisted joke, as if to remind me of my past struggles. The rich aroma of the wine clung to me,
a stark, humiliating contrast to the refined gathering around us. I was filled with anger and disappointment at his unchanged, spiteful behavior. But this time, I was ready. I looked him straight in the eyes, my resolve firm, and declared that this was the beginning of my counterattack. His face paled, eyes widened in shock, perhaps not expecting the once quiet boy to challenge him. My journey, marked by simplicity and challenges, had shaped me, not weakened me. And now it was time for me to show that I wasn't defined by my past, but empowered by it. Growing up, I always tried to avoid trouble, especially to spare my mom any stress. Roy, however, came from a different world. His father was the president of Jack Merchandising, a renowned local food company. This connection made Roy somewhat of a golden boy at school, where teachers saw him as a model student. Behind this facade, he was a notorious bully, leveraging his father's influence to intimidate anyone who dared stand up to him. As a result, my classmates slowly began to distance themselves, unwilling to get caught in Roy's crosshairs. Their indifference only emboldened him, and his bullying intensified. One day, it all came to a head. During lunch, I sat in my usual secluded spot on the staircase trying to eat in peace. But Roy, with his typical sneering smile, decided not to leave me alone. "Hey, Stephen, typical peasant's lunch looks as bad as ever," he taunted, reaching for my lunchbox. Reacting instinctively, I knocked his hand away, which only escalated things. In a flash of anger, Roy grabbed my lunchbox and slammed it onto the ground, scattering the modest meal my mother had prepared. The sight of my lunch in ruins, combined with the thought of my mother's efforts, pushed me past my breaking point. "What the heck are you doing?" I yelled, grabbing him by the collar. His smug response about the consequences of hitting him was the last straw. Before I knew it, I had tackled him to the ground. His once handsome face was now red and swollen. We both lay there, gasping for breath. "You'll pay for this," Roy hissed. Just then, a teacher, drawn by the commotion, intervened and dragged us to the guidance office. There, amidst the chaos, my mother arrived, pale and apologetic, bowing repeatedly to the teachers. Despite my attempts to explain, the guidance teacher, with his shiny face and bulging eyes, took Roy's side, swallowing his fabricated story without question. Roy, untouched due to his father's status, painted me as the aggressor. The teacher's parting words to me were laden with disdain, questioning what kind of adult I would become, always resorting to violence. As my mother and I left the office, the harsh realities of our financial struggles weighed heavily on me. Despite the incident, my mom believed in my good nature. I knew I couldn't burden her further, so I resolved more than ever to alleviate her hardships and prove everyone wrong about who I was destined to become. Years had rolled by since I made the decision not to pursue college, opting instead to work. Decades have faded into each other, days whisked away by seasons that changed before my eyes as society itself transformed at an overwhelming pace. The streets where I grew up no longer looked the same, and the sharp edges of my turbulent adolescence slowly blurred into softer, distant memories. It was during this period of reflection that an invitation to a middle school reunion arrived, stirring old ghosts. Among the faces that flashed in my mind was Roy's, with that familiar, mocking sneer. Despite my reluctance, knowing he would likely be there, I convinced myself to go. We were all adults now. Surely the pettiness of schoolyard conflicts wouldn't follow us into our grown-up lives. At the reunion, a classmate greeted me warmly. "Hey, Stephen, long time no see. You look good." It felt strangely like slipping back through time to those middle school days. While many friendships had faded, a few had endured even through the aftermath of my public altercation with Roy. "Man, you've aged a bit, haven't you?" he joked, patting his belly. Then, amidst the laughter and nostalgia, a voice I couldn't forget cut through. Hey, you're here too, huh? Wow, Roy, that's you? He appeared inebriated, his mood buoyant. Surprisingly, I found myself asking, Roy, you okay? His response was swift and sharp. A bottom feeder like you worrying about me? I haven't fallen that low. Holding a wine glass aloft, Roy boasted, I run Jack merchandising now. It's wise to stay on my good side. His arrogance undimmed, he then peered at me, taunting, Hey, the high school dropout still rocking that pathetic style, huh? Well, let me treat you to some fine wine today. Without a second thought, he tipped the glass, drenching me with wine, the crowd falling silent as they witnessed the spectacle. The rich aroma enveloped me, a stark reminder of the disdain he still held. How about that? Bet you're thrilled to get a taste of the high-life high school dropout, he sneered, unchanged from the boy who thrived on his privilege to belittle others. Anger and disappointment surged within me. Any faint hope that he might have changed was dashed. Facing Roy's mocking expression, I found my resolve. Roy, I've made up my mind, I declared, my voice steady. Fired? What's that supposed to mean, high school dropout? Can't even speak English? He retorted, clearly confused. But I was serious and my words were clear. It means exactly what it sounds like. The murmurs around us grew louder as the tension peaked. A former classmate tapped my shoulder, his expression echoing a question that seemed to linger in the charged air. After the humiliating incident at the reunion, I took a deep breath and decided to explain my current situation. Wiping the wine off my face with a handkerchief I had pulled from my pocket, I calmly began to speak. Actually, I work at a food company that rivals Jack Merchandising. I'm in charge of corporate acquisitions and, coincidentally, I'm currently working on acquiring your company. Roy, trying to mask his sudden unease with bravado, his lips twitching slightly, replied, What are you talking about? The sweat on his forehead became noticeable as he tried to maintain his composure. You should have been informed by now. President William from William Merchandising, my boss, was supposed to have officially contacted you about this acquisition, I continued. William? Wait, the company you work for is... Roy's face drained of color as the reality set in. Yes, I affirmed. I work for William Merchandising. After high school, I joined this company and now serve as an executive director, overseeing the entire operation. Deciding not to pursue college and instead entering the workforce directly was a challenging path. Initially, few companies were willing to hire someone without a college degree. I wasn't in a position to be selective. I applied for any job I could find, eventually landing part-time work at a logistics warehouse. Despite my efforts, the stigma of my educational background was a thick barrier, and I was never considered for permanent employment. Feeling lost and unsure of my future, I returned home from work one evening to a surprise. My father, who I never expected to see again, was there. He looked much older. His hair was streaked with white, despite his weak smile. Seeing him initially brought a rush of anger. You just waltz back in now? Do you have any idea how much we suffered? I confronted him.
With tears in his eyes, my father apologized. I'm sorry, Stephen. I'm truly sorry. I was so focused on getting the company on track that I neglected you and your mother. No excuse can make up for the hardship I caused. I'm deeply sorry. My mother and I were silent, absorbing his words. After a moment, my mother spoke. Regardless, I'm thankful you've come back. Things might not return to how they were, but I do want to try and rebuild our family. However, there is one condition. And what might that be? My father asked tentatively. Give Stephen a full-time job at your company, she demanded. I turned to look at her, surprised by her boldness. Stephen has been working hard since he decided not to go to college. He should be enjoying his youth, not struggling endlessly. That unexpected moment led to a turning point in my life. Joining my father's company not only provided stability but also a platform to rise through the ranks based on my merits and hard work, proving that the path I chose,
though unconventional, was filled with potential. Despite not completing high school, I had always managed to keep my head above water with various jobs, but finding stable, full-time work was a different battle altogether. When the prospect of working at my father's company came up, my mother, with a rare sternness in her expression, pushed for my employment there. My father agreed, but with a firm condition: I needed to earn my GED. His tone carried a weight of sincerity. It was clear he cared deeply about my prospects. So I transitioned from a factory temp to an employee at a well-established company. This was no easy feat. As the president's son, I found myself the subject of envy and scrutiny. Every small mistake was magnified, and I struggled to adapt to the nuances of corporate life and business etiquette. The learning curve was steep, and my colleagues were far from supportive, often just scoffing at my efforts without offering any help. I felt isolated, battling through each day as I faced sneers and watched my hard work dismissed or my workspace disrespected. Despite these challenges, I persevered, driven by a mix of determination and a desire not to let my mother down. She had put herself on the line to secure this opportunity for me, and I couldn't bear the thought of failing her. I volunteered for even the most menial tasks and met unreasonable demands with earnest effort. Gradually, as I continued to work relentlessly, people began to recognize my dedication. Slowly, I started to be seen as a valuable team member, and this shift began to reflect on the quality and results of my work. This change didn't just benefit me personally, it acted as a positive influence within the company, helping to boost morale and, subsequently, sales. Over the years, my efforts paid off, and I was eventually promoted to executive director, tasked with significant responsibilities, including the negotiations for the acquisition of Jack Merchandising, a company that had been struggling for years. At a reunion, my newfound status became a topic of surprise and conversation among my former classmates. "Stephen, you've made an incredible rise through the ranks. Never thought we'd have an executive director among us. It's going to be a bit awkward just casually inviting you out now," one joked, highlighting the unexpectedness of my journey. Roy, however, remained skeptical and outright dismissive. "Stop lying. I don't accept such a tall tale," he retorted, disbelief clouding his judgment. "It seems your dad, the president, hasn't been very forthcoming about the company's situation with you," I replied, calm but firm. "It's not surprising you didn't know, but concerning my promotion to president, that's in the works too." My response left Roy speechless, his previous arrogance washed away by the tide of reality that I had indeed changed my destiny through sheer grit and perseverance. With a stern expression, I conveyed the decision my father had given me: to restructure the entire management of Jack Merchandising, starting from the top. Roy's face turned pale. "That's impossible," he stammered. "You don't have enough evidence to make such a drastic decision." I sighed, a mix of frustration and resolve filling me. "I heard about the reunion and remembered you were supposed to be the next president. I thought it wouldn't be too late to meet and talk here." As I spoke, a sense of disappointment washed over me. Roy hadn't changed at all. He was still demeaning others, still filled with misguided confidence. "But you can't just fire me. Come on, help me out. We were classmates, right?" His tone had shifted from arrogance to desperation. He was pleading now, but I couldn't let past camaraderie sway my professional judgment. "Running a company isn't as simple as you might think," I said firmly, gripping Roy's shoulders and locking eyes with him. "I've faced countless challenges as the president's son, but I never gave up because this company was my only path. You, on the other hand, had more advantages, like a good high school and a college education. It's time you put in real effort for once in your life." My voice trembled with restrained emotion as I spoke, the weight of the years bearing down on me. Roy simply stared back in silence, wordless and seemingly unable to respond. A month after the reunion, I stood in front of the Jack merchandising building with my father. "Today we'll officially proceed with the acquisition," I declared. The night before, I had confided in my father, and after some initial hesitation, he had agreed to my plan. "We've been waiting for you," said the president of Jack Merchandising, greeting us warmly as we entered the meeting room. His son, Roy, followed him, a grim reminder of our previous encounter. Jack began, "We had hoped Roy would succeed me as president." He then turned the conversation to the acquisition, prompting me to start the discussion. However, Roy's behavior was far from what one would expect of a future president or even a professional. "Hey, Roy, are you even listening? This is about the future of your company. Do you even realize what being a president entails?" I raised my voice and frustration was evident. "I don't need to hear that from you," Roy retorted sharply, then turned to his father with an audacious claim. "Dad, are you sure it's okay to trust our company to someone who just climbed up using his parents' influence?" His father, witnessing this exchange, showed a look of exasperation, and even the typically stern Jack's expression grew more severe. "Fool! What do you know about running a company?" he responded, his voice laden with disappointment at his son's naivete and entitlement. The room filled with tension as the reality of the situation settled in for everyone present. Roy's temples throbbed with frustration as he faced us, his expression revealing a vulnerability I hadn't seen before. Jack, his father, continued sternly, undeterred by his rising anger. "Stephen's right. Your behavior today is unacceptable. Running a company isn't a game. If you can't take this seriously, you should leave." Roy's response was feeble, overshadowed by his father's formidable presence. Standing up, the president turned to us with a grave look. "I apologize for this disgraceful display. I've been too lenient with my son, hoping he would mature in the workforce. I was wrong. I never imagined he would act so recklessly, especially in such an important meeting." He then addressed me directly. "To you, Stephen, the executive director of William Merchandising, and to your team, I am truly sorry for the trouble caused." My father, who had been listening intently, spoke up. "Your intentions are clear, Jack." The once commanding figure of the food company's president seemed considerably diminished. Jack, looking desperate, continued, "President Stephen, we need your help to save Jack Merchandising. We no longer can manage on our own. If we merge with your company, I will resign from all my management positions and the same will go for the entire board. But please keep our employees, our dedicated staff, without letting anyone go." With that, he bowed so deeply that his forehead nearly touched the table. I glanced at my father, who appeared deep in thought, his eyes closed. "Dad," I murmured. He nodded solemnly. "Jack," I began, "I see the dedication you have for your company. Given that, let's offer you another chance to turn things around. A chance for you and Roy to demonstrate you truly care about your employees. We will support you as much as we can. However, if that fails, we will have no choice but to assume full control." Roy and his father looked at each other, shocked. "Stephen, how can we ever thank you?" Roy asked, his voice weak, his father beside him tearful, looking utterly drained. As I continued, I glanced between the two. "I've always harbored resentment towards my father," I admitted, causing a stir of surprise in Roy. "He was so consumed by work that I had to drop out of high school. I was determined to prove him wrong, yet my mother, who endured the most, chose to forgive him. At first, I couldn't understand her decision, but now I see why she chose forgiveness. She taught me the importance of it." My father, touched by my words, murmured, "Stephen, I am who I am today because your mother forgave me." The room fell silent, the weight of forgiveness and the chance for redemption hanging in the air, marking a pivotal moment for everyone involved. Recently, I've reached a point where I can finally begin to forgive my father.
Jack nodded, seemingly motivated by an invisible force as I shared my belief in second chances and the strength gained from overcoming adversity. I turned to Roy, who was slouched back in his chair with a sulky demeanor, and caught his glance. "Roy, it starts here. Isn't this your time to step up?" "But I don't know anything about running a company," he replied, uncertainty in his voice. Placing my hand on his shoulder, I reassured him, "It's okay to start now. Work hard and the results will come." Roy looked at me, a faint smile breaking through for the first time. Following our discussions, Jack Merchandising agreed to a business partnership with William Merchandising and began its journey toward recovery. Roy took on the role of president with his father as an advisor. He let go of the pride that came from being the son of Jack Merchandising's owner and worked tirelessly to rebuild trust with each business partner through humble interactions. His transformation became a source of inspiration for the employees, leading to a positive shift in the company culture. The once complacent company, previously marred by internal power struggles, saw its employees rise to the challenge. Sales teams put in more effort, and the administration focused on creating a welcoming environment for business partners. Roy made significant changes to the workplace, revising welfare policies to be more inclusive and eliminating divisive systems. This contributed greatly to a turnaround for the previously struggling company. Encouraged by the changes, including Roy's, the company's sales gradually improved, resembling ascending stairs. This year, we even managed to provide modest bonuses to all employees. Similarly, our company's performance improved significantly, allowing us to sponsor various advertising campaigns. "Stephen, President, hurry up, just a minute, wait for me." The reunion had become a catalyst for rekindling friendships. Initially wary of Roy, my classmates were now impressed by his transformation, sharing jokes and laughter. "Hey, can we drop the president title when we're off work?" I asked with playful annoyance. "It's just a habit," Roy replied, scratching his head in embarrassment, his demeanor endearingly sincere. "Then at least call me by my old nickname when we're not working. I forgot what it was you used to call me that all the time. Can't believe you remember that," Roy said, feigning exasperation. "All right, how about this? From now on, every time you call me president, you owe me a drink," I proposed, cementing our newfound camaraderie with a light-hearted bet that brought a genuine smile to both our faces. Reflecting on the conversation, I found myself agreeing inwardly. "That's a really good idea," I acknowledged. "Okay, Stephen, that's a first," Roy responded, pausing for a moment before using the nostalgic nickname. "Thanks, Stephen. Throughout my life, I've often held on to negative emotions, a trait common in human nature. I harbored resentment for being looked down upon as a high school dropout and felt a deep bitterness regarding my social standing. If I hadn't moved towards forgiving my father, I might never have reached out to Roy or reconnected with other old friends. Despite the past harassment and challenges from Roy, I couldn't bring myself to give up on him, remembering the struggles I had overcome myself. I've learned that people who navigate through hardships develop a resilience that prepares them for future challenges. If there's a genuine desire to start anew, change can indeed begin from that moment. Moving forward, I plan to lead the company with humility, navigating the intricate challenges of business with renewed dedication. I look forward to doing this alongside my valued friends and colleagues, understanding that our shared experiences and forgiveness have paved the way for this new chapter. I was completely taken aback when my husband abruptly stated that unless the ownership of our house was transferred to his name, he would consider a divorce. This house is more than just a building to me. It's a treasure chest of precious family memories, and the thought of losing it is unbearable. Despite my deep emotional attachment to our home, my husband's threat felt like a manipulation of my sentiments. In my distress, I turned to my father for support. "My name is Patricia, and I'm a 32-year-old full-time housewife. I've devoted my life to managing our household since marrying Terry 3 years ago. I left my job to fully support our home life while Terry has been the primary earner. Our life, however, took a difficult turn following the death of Terry's father, which unexpectedly led to his mother moving in with us. The news of her arrival was sprung on me just a day in advance, which was disconcerting enough. And just when I was trying to adapt to this sudden change, Terry nonchalantly mentioned that my mother would also be moving in the very next day. He dropped this news casually as he came home from work, asking me to make the necessary preparations. I was stunned. I had assumed her visit was just that, a visit. But no, she was here to stay, and the decision had been made without any consultation with me. Upon her arrival, my mother-in-law walked in with an air of dissatisfaction. She immediately questioned why I hadn't picked her up from the station, chiding that it was common sense to do so given her journey. Caught off guard, I explained that I hadn't known her exact arrival time, to which she retorted that I should have called to check. Her remarks were sharp. "You're so thoughtless," she scolded, adding, "This is why they say some daughter-in-laws are useless and inconsiderate." Despite being a guest, she settled heavily onto the sofa, her displeasure evident. From the moment she walked in, she acted as if she owned the place. I was astounded. From that day on, her snide remarks grew even more frequent and biting. Each morning, as soon as my husband Terry left for work, she began her barrage. "Patricia, why are you just sitting there? Do the dishes. You should have finished the laundry this morning. That's just common sense." I would apologize and tell her, "I'll do the laundry once the dishes are done." She'd snap back, "You have the wrong priorities. In my house, it was a rule to do laundry right after breakfast. Haven't your parents taught you not to make excuses?" I had established my daily routine long before she arrived, but Kayla seemed unable to grasp this. It didn't matter if I followed her instructions to the letter. She would find fault regardless and complain incessantly. The hours I spent alone with her during the day were particularly challenging. One day, I had a revelation on how to escape this living nightmare. I remembered the house I had inherited from my father. He had retired early a few months ago, and my parents had started a new life in the countryside, passing their house on to me. Fortunately, this house wasn't too far from our current apartment, and Terry and I had already discussed moving there eventually. Pushed to my limits by living with my mother-in-law, I decided it was time to broach the subject of moving sooner rather than later. "Terry, can we talk for a moment?" I asked one evening. "What's up? Did something happen?" he replied. "Do you remember the house my father gave us? What do you think about moving there?" "Oh, that house. We did talk about moving there someday. Why the sudden decision?" "Well, I've been having some difficulties with your mother. She might not have mentioned anything, but I can't bear living with her anymore. That's why I'm seriously considering moving. Considering the new place isn't too far, I suggested we move there, allowing your mother to stay in the current apartment." Surprisingly, Terry agreed to the move. After informing Kayla, we decided to make the move a week later. Honestly, I anticipated some opposition from her, but she accepted our decision with a big smile. "Goodbye, Terry and Patricia. I'm so sorry for the sudden decision to move," she said cheerfully. "Don't worry about it," Terry replied, relieved. "It's generous of your dad to have given us the house," Kayla remarked with a smile. "Thank you, and come visit us sometime soon. Of course, we're not that far away, and I'd love it if you came to visit us regularly, too," she added, her voice filled with a hopeful expectation. "I will," I promised her. After wrapping up our conversation, my husband and I moved to our new home. I felt a wave of relief wash over me, thrilled at the thought that I would no longer have to tolerate Kayla's biting remarks. In our new home, I could finally live freely, setting my schedule and routines. Initially, I had been worried about how Kayla might react, but discussing the move with Terry had calmed my nerves. However, this newfound peace was short-lived. Even though the distance from my mother-in-law allowed me to reduce my stress levels, Terry began coming home late. It wasn't just occasional late nights. There were entire nights when he didn't come home at all. He defended his actions by saying he was concerned about his mother, but his frequent unannounced absences began to disrupt my life significantly. This can't continue, I thought to myself. One day, I decided it was time for a serious conversation. Terry, you've been coming home really late these days, and sometimes you don't come home at all. Is that so? He replied casually. I'm just worried about my mother. That's not the issue here, I responded firmly. At the very least, you should inform me beforehand if you're going to be late so that I don't wait up for you or prepare dinner unnecessarily. Since you're a housewife and you're always at home, you can just eat the leftovers for lunch the next day, right? He suggested thoughtlessly. So you're implying I should just accept everything silently because I'm a housewife? Are you saying we shouldn't even discuss this? Isn't it true? Housewives just have it easy at home, he retorted, which shocked me. What are you even saying? I countered, hurt and frustrated. Besides, I'm concerned about leaving my mother alone. Amy will be coming back soon, and I need to discuss some things with her. Wait, Amy is coming back? What do you need to discuss with her? Curious and increasingly anxious, I pressed him for more information. We're moving Amy in here to live with us. She's always wanted a big house like the one she had abroad. That's why I thought it would be a good idea to let her stay in this house, Terry explained nonchalantly. What? I exclaimed, completely taken aback by the sudden news. Is my sister-in-law going to live in our house? I was overwhelmed, struggling to process this unexpected turn of events. I had just begun to enjoy a reprieve from Kayla's relentless critiques when a new challenge presented itself. My husband announced that his sister Amy was going to live in our house. I was stunned. This house wasn't just any property. It was the home I inherited from my father, and it felt entirely wrong to just hand it over. It's the only sizable house that would satisfy Amy, my husband reasoned. The apartment where we used to live, where my mother now stays, is too cramped for 4 people. But I never planned for us to live with Amy. Instead, I intend to give this house to her, he declared. What? Why? I gasped, barely able to grasp his logic. Because we plan to move back in with my mother. Amy can use this house freely, he explained. His proposal was unreasonable, and I felt like I might faint. Despite my clear insistence that I had no desire to live with my mother-in-law again, my husband grew increasingly irate. Can't you be a little more considerate? You live because of my support, so just do as I say. This house is wasted on you, he snapped. Why should I give it to Amy? This house is precious to me. It was inherited from my father, I protested. I've already told Amy I've got her a large house. It's too late to say otherwise now, he continued as if the matter was already decided without my consent. You've decided all of this without even consulting me? I can't accept it, I replied, trying to maintain my composure. Enough, calm down and think about it. I'll go back to my mother's for a while, he said angrily before slamming the door and leaving. Alone, I was left in tears, struggling to comprehend why my husband would make such unilateral decisions. It was inconceivable that he intended to give away the house I had inherited from my father to my sister-in-law. Every day thereafter, he sent me messages, asking if I had calmed down and urging me to come back soon. Each time, I firmly reiterated that I had no intention of complying with his plans. Then, one day, he dropped another bombshell over the phone. Hey, Patricia, when will you come here and live with me? Stop nagging. I've said it so many times. I have no intention of living with Kayla, moving there and giving this house to Amy. I've already told Amy. Stop being selfish. His words left me more resolved than ever to stand my ground, shocked at his blatant disregard for my feelings and our shared life. She might be returning this week, so apparently there's no time to delay.
Why should I give up my house for your family? I inherited this house from my father. Don't make decisions on your own. Who do you think you're talking to? I protested, my voice quivering with frustration. Even my mother was furious about the situation, echoing my sentiments. That's not my problem. You're ignoring my feelings, I responded firmly. My husband let out a heavy sigh over the phone, his frustration palpable. Then, he said something that shook me to the core. If you can't listen to me, then let's get a divorce. Hand over the house to Amy and leave by tomorrow. At that moment, any remaining affection I had for my husband evaporated. The idea of him using divorce as a threat, without any regard for my feelings, was utterly despicable. I couldn't possibly forgive him for wielding such a threat. With a tone laced with arrogance, he continued, "Listen, if you don't leave by tomorrow, I'll divorce you. That's it." "Wait, are you serious?" I asked, incredulous. "Of course I am. You don't have a choice. What will you do if you, a housewife, get divorced? You can't survive," he taunted. "Enough. I get it," I said sharply. "Hurry up and move over here. My mother is looking forward to disciplining you." He hung up the phone with a tone of confidence, assuming I would comply. After that call, I was resolute. I decided to seek help from my father to devise a plan. By the next day, everything was ready for my move. I replied calmly when he inquired, "By the way, I'm curious, when will Amy be back?" "She'll be back tomorrow." "Why are you so obsessed with Amy?" he questioned, a hint of suspicion in his voice. "Between you and me, she seems to have made quite a sum from stock investments," I mentioned casually. "I see. So, if you provide her with a house, maybe you can ask for financial help," he suggested, trying to rationalize his stance. "That's so like you," I retorted. "Anyway, you need to leave that house by today. It's inconvenient for all of us." "Don't worry, I've already moved," I stated coolly. "What do you mean?" My husband seemed genuinely surprised. "I knew it. You don't want to divorce me, do you?" "Naturally, without an income, you can't survive," he claimed, still underestimating my resolve and independence. "All of this is coming to an end. We're still legally married, and that's the only reason we're even having this conversation now," I told him, my voice steady and resolute. "Wait, what?" "I can only think about divorce now," I added, clearly shocking him with my directness. "You promised to move out of that house and live with me, but you've already moved?" "What are you saying?" he stammered, his voice laden with confusion and rising panic. "Of course, I won't live in a house with a husband who decides everything on his own and a domineering mother-in-law. Why are you including me in your plans for Amy?" I retorted. "You promised to move out for Amy," he tried to argue, clinging to his previous demands. "I said I've already moved, didn't I? Enough with the jokes. Where are you now?" he asked, his tone becoming increasingly panicky, clearly losing his composure. "I'm at my parents' house. I moved to their rural home. I don't plan on returning to where you are," I explained calmly, delivering the news that I knew would unsettle him further. "You should have told me that sooner," he replied, a hint of relief but also frustration in his voice. "If you truly want to give the house to Amy, here's the deal. It's on the market for $520,000. Buy it for that amount and then hand it over to her," I stated firmly. "Are you joking? I'm serious. The house was still in my father's name, so I asked him to sell it," I continued, clarifying my actions and intentions. "My father always said if something happens, I should contact him. I could live in the house or sell it as I see fit, and he would help me." As a result of the valuation, a price of $520,000 was proposed, which I gladly agreed to, and we put the house on the market immediately. My husband probably never anticipated that I would take such a decisive step. "Why are you doing this without asking me? This is unforgivable," he spat out, consumed with anger and disbelief. "I'm not asking for, nor do I need your approval. We're getting divorced soon anyway. I don't care. Do you understand your position? You'll be the one in trouble if we divorce since you don't have an income. You're just a housewife." He tried to belittle me, assuming that I would be helpless without him. "I'd rather struggle on my own than be with you forever," I responded firmly, cutting off his attempts to manipulate me. "Listen, Amy will be coming back soon," he started, but I was no longer interested in his plans or threats. I was set on my path, determined to reclaim my independence and dignity. I mentioned before that I was counting on Amy's financial contributions, didn't I? So, if you want Amy to have that house, you can purchase it for $520,000. That is, of course, if you're able to, I pointed out firmly. What? That's impossible. If Amy has indeed made a fortune from her investments, I don't see why she couldn't afford it, he retorted, clearly caught off guard. I'm not sure exactly how much she made, but to say she can't afford it just sounds like you're making excuses, I replied, not giving in to his lack of accountability or apologies while maintaining his assertive attitude. Realizing that further discussion was pointless, I decided to make my stance crystal clear. I'm finished with this chaos you've created. Did you think threatening me with a divorce would make me surrender the house? If you assumed that being a housewife means I'd simply obey, you're deeply mistaken. Let's just calm down and discuss this, he suggested, trying to soften the tone. I am calm. It seems like you're the one panicking. I won't let myself be controlled by you or your family any longer. Go back to your mother. Stay out of my life, I exclaimed loudly, my voice ringing clear enough for anyone nearby to hear, and then I abruptly ended the call. Fed up with the constant tumultuous conversations, I blocked his number. I promptly sought legal advice and pursued a divorce. It took some time, but eventually the divorce was granted, recognizing the faults on my husband's part. He and Kayla continued residing in that small apartment. Meanwhile, Amy, unable to secure the large house she desired, expressed her frustration, claiming it wasn't what she was promised, and she returned overseas. My ex-husband's hopes of leveraging his sister's financial success crumbled, and he found himself struggling to manage financially, burdened with the responsibility of alimony and supporting his mother. Living with such a self-centered mother, his prospects of a thriving future seemed bleak. In contrast, I relocated to the countryside, enjoying tranquil days with my parents. I began a new job as a clerical worker at a local company, thanks to a neighbor's recommendation. With this job, I found financial independence and contentment. I decided to stay close to my parents for the foreseeable future, cherishing the opportunity to give back to them for all their support and love.